There's a specific moment that happens when you check your savings account and see $50,000 sitting there for the first time, and it's not what you think. It's not excitement. It's not relief. It's something much stranger and much more powerful than either of those things. Your entire relationship with money, with risk, with your career, with other people, all of it shifts in a way that's almost impossible to describe until you've experienced it yourself. And here's what nobody tells you. That shift isn't just psychological, it's neurological. Your brain literally starts functioning differently when you cross this threshold. And once you understand what's actually happening inside your head at $50,000, you're going to want to get there faster than you ever thought possible. My name is Anik, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, neuroscience, and why certain financial milestones don't just change your bank account. They change who you fundamentally are as a person. If you want to understand what $50,000 in savings actually does to your brain, your behavior, and your entire life trajectory, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see this milestone differently. Let's get into it. Before we talk about what happens at $50,000, let's talk about what life looks like before it. Because most people reading about financial milestones are somewhere in the early stages, maybe a few thousand saved, maybe nothing at all, and they need to understand what they're actually working toward. Not the number, the transformation. When you have little to no savings, your entire psychological relationship with the world operates from a place of scarcity. Every decision gets filtered through fear. Every opportunity gets evaluated through the lens of what could go wrong. You don't apply for the better job because what if you don't get it and you've wasted your time? You don't start the side business because what if it fails and you've wasted your money? You don't leave the relationship that isn't working because what if you can't afford to live alone? Financial scarcity doesn't just affect your bank account. It colonizes your entire decision-making process. It makes you smaller, more cautious, more reactive. And the cruel irony is that this cautious, reactive version of you is exactly the version least likely to make the moves that would improve your financial situation. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. When you accumulate $50,000 in savings, something specific happens in your brain at a neurological level. Cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, drops measurably, not just a little, significantly. Studies on financial stress consistently show that people with substantial savings have cortisol profiles that more closely resemble people on vacation than people in their normal working lives. Think about what that actually means. Lower cortisol doesn't just mean you feel less stressed. It means your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, long-term planning, and impulse control, starts functioning at a dramatically higher level. When you're financially stressed, your brain is operating in a low-grade fight-or-flight state almost constantly. Your amygdala, the emotional reactive part of your brain, is running the show. Every financial decision gets hijacked by fear before your rational brain even gets a chance to evaluate it. But when that cortisol drops at $50,000, your prefrontal cortex takes back control. You start making decisions from a place of clarity instead of fear, and that single neurological shift changes everything. The first thing you'll notice when you cross $50,000 is a dramatic change in your relationship with risk. And this is counterintuitive because most people assume having more money makes you more conservative, more afraid of losing it. But the opposite is actually true. When you have $50,000 saved, calculated risks stop feeling dangerous and start feeling like opportunities. Here's why. Risk tolerance isn't really about personality, it's about runway. When you have zero savings, any risk that doesn't work out is potentially catastrophic. You can't afford to be wrong. So your brain learns to avoid risk entirely. But when you have $50,000 in the bank, being wrong about something doesn't destroy you. You have runway. You have time to recover. You have options. This runway effect is why people who hit $50,000 in savings suddenly start doing things they'd been putting off for years. They apply for the promotion. They start the business they've been planning in their head for 3 years. They move to the city they actually want to live in instead of staying somewhere safe and familiar. The money didn't make them braver. It gave their existing courage somewhere to stand. Nothing changes at $50,000 more dramatically than your relationship with work. And this is where the real financial integration begins. Before $50,000, you negotiate from weakness. You accept the first offer because you need the job. You stay in roles that are going nowhere because leaving feels too risky. You avoid conflict with management because you can't afford to lose this position. You're not just underpaid, you're psychologically trapped. But $50,000 changes the entire dynamic in one specific way. You develop what I call genuine optionality. You can realistically survive 12 to 18 months without income depending on your expenses. That's not just a financial fact. It's a psychological superpower. The moment you know you can walk away, you stop negotiating from desperation and start negotiating from value. You ask for the raise you actually deserve because the worst they can say is no, and you'll genuinely be okay either way. You push back on unreasonable demands because your livelihood no longer depends on staying silent. You start interviewing for better positions because you're not desperate enough to accept whatever comes along first. And here's the fascinating part. You often don't even need to use this optionality. Just knowing it exists changes how you carry yourself at work. Your confidence becomes visible. People respond to it. Better opportunities find you because you've stopped operating from a frequency of desperation. This one surprises most people. $50,000 in savings changes your relationships in ways that have nothing to do with money directly. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of relationship conflict across every demographic. When you're constantly worried about money, that anxiety bleeds into every interaction you have with the people closest to you. You're shorter with your partner, less patient with your kids, more withdrawn from friends, more resentful of people who seem more financially stable than you. But when that financial anxiety lifts at $50,000, you get access to emotional bandwidth you didn't know you were missing. You show up differently in your relationships. You're more present, more generous with your time and attention, more willing to be vulnerable because you're not carrying a constant low-level panic about your financial situation. There's also a subtler effect on your social life. When you have $50,000 saved, social situations involving money stop being sources of anxiety and start being straightforward choices. Going to a friend's wedding in another city, contributing to a group gift, joining friends for dinner at a restaurant you'd have previously avoided. These stop being financial calculations and start being simple decisions about what you actually want to do. Here's something about $50,000 that nobody talks about enough. The confidence it creates doesn't stay in the financial lane. It bleeds into every other area of your life in ways that are almost impossible to predict. When you've proven to yourself that you can save $50,000, which requires sustained discipline, delayed gratification, and consistent follow-through over an extended period of time, your brain updates its model of what you're capable of. This matters enormously because most people's self-limiting beliefs aren't really about specific things. They're about capability in general. When you believe deep down that you can't follow through on things, that belief shows up everywhere. In your health, in your relationships, in your career, in your creative pursuits. But when you prove to yourself that you can do something genuinely hard over a long period of time, like saving $50,000, that proof transfers. Your brain has new evidence about who you are, and it starts applying that evidence across every domain of your life. People who hit $50,000 in savings frequently report that they started exercising more consistently, eating better, working on long-term projects they'd been procrastinating on, not because saving money is related to any of those things, but because the identity shift carries over. You've become someone who does hard things, and that identity is worth more than the $50,000 itself. Let's talk about what $50,000 actually does mathematically, because this is where things get genuinely exciting. At $50,000 invested with a conservative 8% annual return, your money is generating $4,000 per year completely automatically. That's over $300 per month appearing in your account without you doing anything, without you going to work, without you making any decisions. Your money is now working a part-time job on your behalf. And here's what makes this feel completely different from earlier stages of saving. That $4,000 annual return is real money that moves the needle. It's not $200 a year that feels symbolic. It's enough to cover a car insurance payment, a flight somewhere, a month of groceries. Your money has crossed the threshold from theoretical to genuinely useful in your daily financial life. But more importantly, and this is the part that changes your psychology most dramatically, You start experiencing the emotional reality of passive income for the first time, money arriving that you didn't directly trade your time for. And once you feel that, even at this relatively modest scale, your entire motivation for continuing to save and invest transforms. You're no longer saving out of discipline and delayed gratification. You're investing because you've tasted what it feels like when money works for you instead of the other way around. The deepest change that happens at $50,000 isn't in your brain chemistry or your risk tolerance or your career trajectory. It's in your fundamental identity. Before $50,000, most people carry a quiet background belief that they're not the type of person who has money, that wealth is something that happens to other people, people who got lucky, people who came from the right families, people who had advantages they didn't have. That belief is usually subconscious. You'd deny it if someone asked directly, but it shapes every financial decision you make because you're unconsciously acting out a story about who you are in relation to money. $50,000 breaks that story, not because $50,000 makes you wealthy in any traditional sense, but because you earned it. You built it yourself, dollar by dollar, decision by decision, month after month. And that means the evidence now contradicts the old story. You can't simultaneously believe you're not the type of person who has money and be looking at $50,000 in your savings account that you built yourself. The old identity has to update. And when it does, everything accelerates because now you're not someone trying to save money. You're someone who saves money. You're not someone trying to build wealth. You're someone who builds wealth. That shift from trying to being is the most powerful financial transformation available to any human being. And $50,000 is the threshold where it most commonly happens. $50,000 isn't a destination. It's a doorway. On one side of that doorway is a version of you that makes decisions from scarcity and fear, negotiates from weakness, and carries financial anxiety into every corner of your life. On the other side is a version of you with a calmer brain, clearer thinking, more courage, better relationships, and money that's starting to genuinely work on your behalf. The number isn't magic, but what it represents, the discipline, the identity shift, the proof of capability, that is as close to magic as personal finance gets. If you're on your way there right now, keep going. The person waiting for you on the other side of that number is worth every sacrifice it takes to reach them.